His name is Bud, and to Meghan Kane, he is the rock of the family. Bud is 83 years old and is the grandfather of Meghan and her 16 other cousins. He is the father of 9 children. He and his wife of 57 years reside in Colts Neck, New Jersey, along with many of their children and grandchildren. For Meghan Kane and her family, this room became all too familiar in 2001 when her grandfather was diagnosed with his first spell of cancer. In 2001, he was diagnosed with lip cancer, and in just a few years, he was diagnosed with larynx cancer in 2007. His battle did not end there, however, for he was diagnosed with prostate cancer 2 years later and skin cancer the following year. For many patients and families, the diagnosis of cancer raises many ethical questions about death and life-sustaining treatment. Bud and his family were no exception. Raised in the church, however, Bud and his family relied on their faith to give them many of these answers. With each new diagnosis, Bud and his family were hit with another life-determining decision. With the larynx cancer battle, a trach had to be inserted into his throat to allow him to breathe. The 9 siblings gathered and decided that the trach had to be put in place, for it was the only way for him to live.
My faith will stand.
The insertion of the trach greatly altered his and his family's lives forever. With the trach in place, he could no longer speak. He now had to rely on his wife to be a spokesperson for every life decision. A paper towel had to be placed underneath it to absorb any excess fluids. The loss of voice and appearance of the trach left him too self-conscious to leave his house. Trach in place, his battle with skin cancer became more challenging for him and his family. With no living siblings, all the pressure laid on his wife and 9 children. The decision to remove a portion of his skin and to keep him on life support once again was made by his family. His children struggled, this time, unsure whether or not to let him go. They came to the final decision to remove the portion of his skin and to keep him on life support, and in doing so, he lived. Meghan described how the past 13 years have been filled with goodbyes, for with each diagnosis and battle, they believed it could be his last. But in surviving each impossible condition, her family has come to put their faith more in the Lord than in the medical care. Though each diagnosis has placed a toll on Bud as well as his caretakers, his family believes it is obvious he wants to live. Despite his stubborn and humorous responses to the doctor's request, Meghan says they will find him standing in the doorway each holiday, watching his family in a simple and pleasant silence. Through this testing time, Meghan's family has become a family who values quantity over quality, for they know Bud is a man who rather lose his voice and be able to watch all his grandchildren grow up than to be able to speak and miss watching his family grow. His name is Bud, and to his family he is the man who cried death.